think it's, if you're on purpose, if you are really doing what you love and you're passionate, your product or your service is in integrity, I believe that absolutely it will be a success. And to spend less time doubting yourself and more time learning and asking for help. Asking for help is so incredibly valuable and very underrated and not done enough by entrepreneurs, is to be bolder. You already have so much courage because you now have left the safety net of corporate or, having a job, and you're doing your own thing. So just dial up that courage a little bit more and ask for help. People want to help and want to support. It's important that we identify what drives us, what motivates us, so that we're giving our businesses the best of ourselves. Because if you're trying to do everything, then you're screwed,
How did you figure that out, what your zone of genius is?
Welcome to Founder Real Talk, honest conversations about what it really takes to be a founder. And before we start the show, hit subscribe to stay tuned.
Warm welcome on my side here, another episode of Founder Real Talk. Today there is Samantha Skyring with me from, the founder of Oryx Desert Soul from the beautiful Kalahari Desert in Africa. I actually just looked it up. It's massive. And so your company, your startup is quite known for its purpose, for its strong identity, and also the rather unconventional start. So the first time I actually came across your story was at the event called Origin Story last year here in Cape Town, which I found it literally hit me very strong, coming from Europe to, listen to all the founder stories over there, especially in Germany, where, the traditional trajectory is kind of like, you had your corporate job and at some point you didn't feel fulfilled and you wanted to start something, but at the same time you literally have a backup plan because either you get money by the government, unemployment money, or whatsoever. So it's quite a different kind of a story you hear there. And then I went to this event and also heard your story and was like, wow, this is like proper entrepreneurship with like proper risk and proper uncertainty. And I found it quite fascinating. Literally, I was really inspired, especially by all the circumstances you've had and how you managed it. So I'm
Thank you.
feel very happy to have you on the show. Yes,
I'm very excited to be here, and I'm intrigued and curious what questions you're going to ask.
Yeah. People always, I think sometimes they're even scared about my questions because, I'm a therapist.
Yeah, right.
And I'm really good in asking questions, but I get a touch and feel. So I want you to feel comfortable, obviously. So maybe for the listeners, can you just touch point a bit on maybe the most pivotal moments of your own story and what you find in particular important, proud about, pivotal, etc. you would like to share so that the listeners get kind of like a bigger picture who that Samantha is?
So I've had a very diverse background. I definitely did not take the normal channel and the easy part. It was definitely the adventurous part. So I think what was a big seed that was planted when I was a teenager was the fact that my dad had a financial crash. And so my friends were getting pocket money and clothing allowance, and they didn't have money to pay me. And so as a bullshit teenager, I was like, okay, well, bugger that. I'll go get it myself. And I went off and got 2 jobs. And that was where the experience of bringing in my own money and having independence started. And I'm highly functionally independent. So, I love looking at my journey, at, hearing other stories and how, the soul curates these experiences along the way to allow us to actually come to full fulfillment, in my view.
Yeah.
Because I believe we're here to grow and to discover ourselves and to grow into our potential. And that isn't through the easy path, it's through challenges. So I was very blessed. My dad kind of pulled things together sort of 6 years later, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. Well, in fact, I did originally know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a teacher of autistic children. And I read so many different books, Tori Hayden, and it was just so incredible. But then I realized that teachers don't get paid very much money, and I was like, okay, well, I can't do that, because suddenly money had some relevance and importance in my life. So my dad ended up buying a business, Bazaar, for me to run. So at 19, I had 30 staff. At those times, it was called a secretary, not a PA. And I became an interior designer of private and corporate jets and small planes. And so I did that for 3 years. But in the middle of that, I actually got married to my high school sweetheart. And we ended up on a very beautiful adventure on Lake Malawi, kayaking. And we discovered an uninhabited island. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you take working, having to get up every day and go to a warehouse and manage 30 staff, or live
Yeah.
barefoot in a bikini on an uninhabited island. Wow, there's not much choice, right? And my partner and I had actually made a pact on our honeymoon that we wanted to be together every day, live somewhere beautiful. And we discovered this island. So that was what we did next. But I had my first experience of partners taking advantage and being manipulative. And so I essentially lost my island, which was, yeah, I guess one of my still heart sores. It was a really magical paradise place. And because I lost my island, I also lost my relationship, because we found paradise together. So how do you move, you move through that and move on from that? So we ended up, having a lot of fun, going to London, going into the clubs, doing all the things that you do when you go clubbing for a long time. And then came back to Cape Town, actually lived in my Fleetline Combi next to that mosque that we'll be walking from tomorrow on our Lions Head walk at 6 a.m.
Yes.
So I lived in a Fleetline Combi for nearly 2 years. I used to bathe in a rock pool at the very end of Table Mountain Road. So yeah, I think many of your listeners know we're on the very tip of Africa in Cape Town. It's the most beautiful
Yes.
place. And now in winter, winter's hit quickly, we've got these beautiful waterfalls. So I had
Mm.
access to my bath every day.
Cold water.
And
Yes.
then and then I did some production management, but now I was working for somebody. And I remember it really used to rile me, because the production manager got the absolute lowest rate. The models were getting paid a fortune just because they looked
Mm.
beautiful, even if they weren't very smart, some of them. And just because they had a gorgeous body, they were getting paid this astronomical amount of money. Yet the production wouldn't happen without me pulling the whole thing together: the venue, the stylist, the director, the models. And yet I got paid the least. So I kind of wanted to start a what's that word? Like a union, Anyway, that
Okay.
didn't happen. I ended up going on a journey to Namibia, which was very special, because I'd actually, before I left, I developed full-blown arthritis throughout my whole body.
Mm.
Just bad eating, smoking, cappuccinos, Red Bulls to get through the long days. And when I started on my journey, I was really struggling to walk. So I had a
Oh.
wish to walk through the dunes with no pain. And about 4.5 months into this incredible adventure that we went on, I walked 120 kilometers through the Namibian desert, and I had close encounters with the Oryx, but I also healed. So it was 7 days in the dunes, this incredible spans, just sleeping out on the sand dunes, or we would find a little cave,
Mm-hmm.
just drinking the river water, minimal food, and walking sort of 8 hours a day. And so that was quite profound. When I walked the last sort of valley, it was full moon. The vehicle we had traveled in, the third person in our little trio, had abandoned us in the desert. He had gone to a lodge, and we had made an agreement we'd find each other in this valley, and he wasn't there when we arrived, which is a bit edgy, because we're 350 kilometers from any town, right? But we knew
Oh,
there was a
yes.
lodge 25 kilometers upstream. And
Okay.
we found his vehicle there, not him. He had followed us on the walk, but we hadn't crossed paths. Um,
Okay.
So, yeah, so that was the seed of this very
Yeah.
beautiful, and it's that gorgeous animal. If anyone doesn't know what an
Mm.
oryx is, it is this
Yeah.
magnificent, majestic gazelle that is endemic, native to the Kalahari Desert of southern Africa.
Yeah.
It can stand 2.5 meters tall. The horns can be a meter tall, and they live and roam in these incredible expanses of desert.
Okay.
So this masked face, when I wanted to create a logo and a brand for this
Hmm.
beautiful salt in the Kalahari Desert, it was the oryx that came to mind.
Wow. So that's basically how you got the logo and the brand, the name. Yes. Wow, beautiful.
From this, so actually I was sitting on a dune, not on a
Yes.
salt dune, just on a sand dune, and I
Yes.
saw two oryx. They were two bulls, one was chasing the other. And then
Mm.
they ran behind a sand dune, and it was like, okay, that was a beautiful moment to witness. And then they ran up the dune and they skidded to a stop because I was sitting with a friend on the sand
Wow.
dune in their path. And so they were, they were 9 feet, or no, maybe more, like 5 meters, so 15 feet in front. And we just sat, and then they ran off as friends. So it was a very profound moment of these two masked creatures right in front. We were sitting down. We actually happened to have an umbrella. And so we didn't look threatening. We didn't look human. We just looked like some weird thing. They would have smelt us, I imagine, but we weren't threatening. So we didn't get skewered or speared with their horns, which is what they can do.
Wow, yes. So were you already running some kind of a business, or was that basically like the seed on which you started everything?
It was only 7 years later
Yes.
when I met the father of my child in an ashram in India. What
Mm.
happens in an ashram should stay in an ashram. Not really, because I have a beautiful son and I have a business. I
Okay.
introduced him to a colleague who was selling the salt internationally in bulk, and he didn't want to
Yeah.
create a product. So we started a product that we were exporting to Europe. And
Okay.
I went and lived in Europe for a year and a half, but it wasn't a safe relationship. And I ended up leaving with a potential kidnapping charge over my head because it was the safest way to get out. And it
Mhm.
was a whole story. Like, I had to leave incognito, and I got escorted by two security guards to the plane. It was like it was a wild week. Like, this escape plan,
Yeah.
fascinating. Like, there were so many beautiful signs of support from
Yeah.
spirit, from God, from the universe, like that I was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then I came home and I started
Wow.
Oryx
So would you
Desert
say
Salt.
that you started it like from a survival space, or like from a purpose-driven perspective? Or how did you where was it coming from?
Survival.
Like survival?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I had to, he wasn't paying any maintenance, and I needed to get food on the table, and I had a 3-year-old and I needed to send him to creche. But I had actually already created the brand while I was in Europe, and I had
Mm.
stock made. So I arrived back to product, to a business that just needed attention and energy and passion behind it. So that was an incredible way to start. It didn't come and have to start it from scratch. It was almost
Yes.
like it was just waiting for me.
Yes.
And for me, being in survival, there's pressure.
Mhm.
So I didn't think too hard. I didn't wait. I didn't put a whole business plan together to see if this was a viable concept. There was just a knowing.
Okay.
And so if the marriage was safe and, secure and happy, then Oryx
Yeah.
wouldn't have been born.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's a blessing, and
Yeah.
it's part of my soul journey.
Yes.
Yeah, and I also know, well, not know, but apparently they say that for every woman that escapes an abusive relationship, it gives 7 or 10 other women permission to do
Mm.
the same, to value themselves and to get out. And that was always interesting because I thought I was a really strong woman. I was very
Mm.
independent, and yet I found myself in this web.
I'm just laughing because the same thing happened to me. I just fled South Africa, like same story.
Wow. Okay, fascinating.
Let
Great.
go of the
Yeah.
business and just like escape because I knew that person doesn't have the visa to actually get to Germany. So yeah, same thing.
Wow. But now you're
Yeah,
back.
now I'm back, different person.
We're gonna have to have
Yes,
a post recording, post podcast conversation.
yes,
But
we
it
do.
grows us, right? You know,
It does a lot. Yeah.
really does.
It's like what if like the dark night of the soul? Like if you hit rock bottom like really hard, like you really get to know who you really are and what your own value
What
is
you're
and like
capable
what's
of.
important to you. Yes. But I
Yeah.
cannot even imagine if you also have a toddler, so there's even more responsibility and probably even more pressure to
And more
also
drive, more
and more drive.
responsibility that I've
True.
now got. In fact, there was a seed moment. I'd already kind of given my power over to a degree. I had my toddler, or not
Yeah.
toddler, I had my newborn. And when I went over to Europe to go live with him to see if it was going to work,
Yeah.
one, I think subconsciously, I was actually taking him back to his country because he had moved over to South Africa as well. So I was kind of sending him back
Mm,
home. But I got on the plane and I'd got a call from the credit card division to say, you are not allowed to spend any more money on this card. I was like, okay, because I was relying on him to support me while I had my newborn.
yeah.
And on the plane, I thought I was going to get a meal on that second, the second leg. And I had to buy a meal. And he wasn't a newborn then, but he was a year and a half. And he said, Mummy, I'm hungry. I'm like, what? And I didn't have money to feed my child. And that was a very powerful, like, I will never, like, I need to get myself out of this situation and to have
Yeah.
relied on somebody else. And now this is where I'm at,
Yeah.
was there, in my heart, in my soul, in my womb, that
Yeah.
I will get myself to a place where I will, be able to take care of myself and my child.
Yeah. Wow. And how did then the fear or anxiety look like for you in the beginning? Like, was it just like a lot of like probably grinding, like lots of work, or like did you go on overdrive, or I don't know, maybe you took wrong decisions because you were literally in survival, or how did that look like for you, especially during these days?
Yeah, definitely overdrive. I mean, I feel quite blessed that I don't generally live in a fear space. I live in an abundant space.
Yeah.
And in a place and space of faith.
Hmm.
I don't, I think this was a seed that my dad gave me because he bought that business for me. He absolutely believed in me, even though he might not have said it in words. Um, and I actually, when Kieran was 2,
Mm-hmm.
I remember reading something or hearing something that how you speak to your child becomes their inner voice.
Mm.
And I think somehow the way my dad would have said, and he wasn't a man of many words and he often wasn't around, he was busy working. But I just had a self belief. I didn't doubt that this is what I wanted to do and that whether it was or wasn't going to be a success. It didn't start and go, oh, this isn't going to be successful. I just carried on as if it was. But I do remember there was one particular day, that's Ninja, where like my money was kind of diminishing
Yeah.
and I was struggling to breathe. There was fear. And then I got an order from a restaurant, and it just that one order, it really just shifted and opened things for me. So, but I remember breathing through it. I think breath has
Mm.
been always quite an intrinsic part of holding me together. Sometimes it doesn't always hold me together, and I need help, I'm falling apart,
Yes.
which I've done many times along the way. Kind of reaching burnout even 2 weeks ago. Phoned my wise
Oh, really?
woman. The day before I saw
Wow.
you on the mountain, actually, I phoned my
Yeah.
homeopath. I was like, "I'm in crisis. I need support now. Give me give me some homeopathic medication to just, like, bring in that frequency to just kind of pull me back together." Anyway, it's been
Yeah.
amazing. Really amazing.
Yeah. What do you think put you into that position, or like how did you, or maybe also for listeners, how can you pull yourself out there? Because I mean, a lot of founders actually always live at that edge. No, like, is there any kind of advice from your side?
So, I mean, I guess they're different phases. Right now, I'm in menopause, which you're not, lucky you. And it's a fascinating time to be in. And I found out the other day that a woman's brain, the myelin sheath rewires and regenerates twice in a woman's life, a teenage hormone period and now at menopause. So the brain is literally rewiring. And I can't do the things that I used to do. I can't multitask that I used to. I cannot hold as many things because at this age, the children are grown up and you're not having to change nappies,
Mm,
cook food, grow food and do whatever, how we operate when, in those years of having, one or many children. The one time I went on a sort of a hormone detox diet, even though I wasn't in that phase, and I just cleaned up
yes.
my diet for 21 days and already felt shifted.
Mm,
I've gone on 10-day silent retreats just to take a break
yeah.
because we are so driven. I mean, entrepreneurs obviously have a different, some different gene that makes us like do this. I've always said that I'm unemployable. I don't like people telling me what to do. I don't even have if I'm driving, Google Maps is on silent. Google Maps
Yeah,
can't tell me. It
you know.
irritates me, right?
That's true.
So it is
Yeah,
that pause,
yes.
and back to the breath.
Mm,
And at the moment, I mean, I have a new investor. I feel a bit burnt out from the last 2 years asking my previous partners to exit and needing to find a new investor. It's not my space. It wasn't entirely new. It was my second time, but investment and investors are not the network of people that I hang out with.
yeah, yeah.
And and yeah, my target this year is high. And this when I actually took myself on 10 days of silence. Took my
Yes,
beautiful 18-year-old who just turned 18 to Cambodia for 2.5 weeks and had the most glorious time. The last week
yes.
I was on this beautiful beach. You could only access it by boat. I snorkeled every day. I walked. It was amazing.
Wow.
And I really thought I was going to come back, recharged, refueled,
Yes.
re-energized. And actually, the day after I got back, I was given notice on my home, which was very stressful. So now I needed to find a new home.
Mm,
I find life is quite crazy these days because 2.5 week holiday sounds amazing to some people, but actually it's ridiculous, right? We should be taking 6 weeks. They're
yeah.
52 days, 52 weeks in a year, right? And you take two for yourself to not to work. It doesn't really make sense, but
Did you
somehow we
feel
just,
shame, guilt when
society.
yeah, did you feel like guilt when you took it? Or like was it hard for you? I mean, even like going to the silent retreat, I mean, a lot of people they fear themselves and wouldn't even go there to sit with what's going on there, like all the different voices and I mean, lots of people like because I've done it twice. The first time I've done it, it was my ego, like because I wanted to literally, you know, prove to myself that I can do it. And then the second I was like, oh shit, I'm there again. Like honestly, like the first hour, I was like, what do I do here? And there was no drive to just prove it because like I knew I could just leave. But it's crazy. How is that for you? Like also like to take the time off and
It was
I mean,
exceptional, actually. It was the end of the year. I was done with the year. I wanted to escape. And
yeah,
I actually downloaded a new playlist the day before and I put it on while I was driving. And as I was
yeah,
driving up this beautiful little road, leading up to this incredible mountain to the place, the
yeah.
last song that was on was Sounds of Silence. And I was
No,
like, wow,
wow.
like I love these love notes
Yes,
from God that just go,
yeah.
you're at the right place at the right time in the right moment. And I see you. And are you seeing me? Are you aware of me? This is this message I'm
Mm.
giving. When I handed that phone over, I was like, take it. It wasn't in the middle of the year where, one's in momentum.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
would love to end every year actually with a Vipassana. It was exquisite. And yeah,
10
there
days,
were
no
some tough
phone, just
days.
meditating. Yes, it is tough, yeah. Especially, like, how was it
Yeah.
for you then to come back to, where probably you start questioning everything or, because, like, you're so much with yourself and then probably it's also hard to not to think about the business, I guess, while you sit in there. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the business closes for 2.5 weeks over December.
Mhm.
So I came out on the 21st. The 23rd was my son's 18th birthday, and I did it with my son, which was incredible. He was still 17. And
Yes.
2 days later, we flew to Cambodia.
Yes.
Then I was on a whole nother adventure. And when you're overseas, you don't quite hold as much attention on things.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm always checking in on my phone. And it's, as a founder, it's really good to be able to hand over your business, to make sure that the
Mm.
things are in place in order for it
Yeah.
not to you, because you can't scale if every aspect of the business is needing you. So it's a good practice.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, like, I
So
mean, often what I heard from a lot of founders is, you are not your business, but you identify with it like quite a lot. So often, especially then this delegation, and then obviously when you delegate, you leave something you're now familiar with, so you get again into something maybe you're not. So there's this entire process about identity, about letting go. So it's like a lot of founders say they struggle with that a lot. Yeah, what
I
was it
don't
for?
so much. I mean, I think I'm a control freak. I think all entrepreneurs are.
Mm,
But there's certain things I don't want to do that. Like, please, you take that admin. I want to do the fun stuff. I want to do the travel. I like doing the sales. When it starts getting too admin-y, then
yeah.
that I don't enjoy. So I'm really trying to hand over the things that aren't fun. So
Nice.
if I can look at it from that perspective, and also to identify what your genius is. I'm genius on a trade show. In fact, I actually only sort of 4 years ago, or nearly actually 5 years ago, when I went to my first biohacking trade show, then it was in Los Angeles with Dave Asprey, but it was this incredible crowd of people who were so like amped and vibrant and embodied and excited and interested and curious and wow, there was something that switched on inside of me, like this performer
Yeah,
rocked. I mean, the exhibitors weren't allowed in the VIP room, or definitely not the green room where the speakers are. I was in the green room chatting to Dave, and like I just got in everywhere. I was like this.
wow.
I was really like this fish that just went into where she wasn't supposed to. I just walk into places, and
Yeah.
I mean, the organizers got to know me. Like I was there. Like I was maxing this conference.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then in sales, like now I'm going to the US again in the middle of May, and I've got 2 trade shows and I've got a gap in between. And so now I'm just networking. I'm part of the Entrepreneurs Organization, and I've never really used the portal, but I'm just now reaching out to people because I want to
Yeah.
meet the buyers in person, because I know I'm bringing this incredible joy, this passion, this excitement for this product that comes from this magnificent place in the Kalahari Desert,
Mm,
where it is untouched and pure and naturally organic and touched by the stars and the moon and the desert wind, compared to sea salt, which comes out of an ocean that's fully polluted and contaminated with industrial waste and pharmaceutical waste.
yeah.
So put me in front of a buyer, like I know that they're not going to be able to resist. So I think it's important that we identify what drives us, what motivates us, so
Mm.
that we're giving our businesses the best of ourselves. Because if you're trying to do
Yeah.
everything, then you spin.
How did you figure that out, what your zone of genius is? Like, did you always know, or like, was it like
Mm.
in the process you could feel, oh, that actually gives you energy, or like that comes easy?
Well, interestingly, when I got the listing in Whole Foods, there's a gentleman in South Africa, Bruce Whitfield, and he was one of the speakers or people on Cape Talk and 702 Finance. And he wanted
Yeah.
to do a 5-minute live interview with me about the Whole Foods. I sat for
Yes.
45 minutes and I had to, like, I almost had a brown paper bag. I was like almost hyperventilating. I was so nervous for it. And that was 5
Mm-hmm.
years ago.
Yes.
Now, oh, wow. Can I talk in front of 300 people? Oh, amazing. Give me the
Yeah.
microphone,
Yeah.
like podcasts. So it's
Yes.
such a beautiful opportunity, our businesses, to grow personally, because as I
Yeah.
grow, the business grows. As the business grows, I have to grow.
Mm.
And in fact, I was sitting with my beautiful my marketing team of women, the 5 of us, and we called the Alchemy of 5 because we just come together over lunch for 4 hours or breakfast, and we share and we talk and we laugh and we dream. And Nina said to me, "Oh, do you know that?" So I've actually got somebody who's been with me for 2.5 years, and then my previous social media person has come back as PR. And at the
Okay.
very beginning of Whole Foods, she helped and supported Oryx to launch into Whole Foods with social media. And apparently then I was like, no, I don't want to go public. No, yeah, maybe, I mean, I'm the founder, but I don't really want to be the face of the brand. I never used to post on Facebook. I mean, I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
not there's a part of me that's not extrovert, that is very introvert and is not
Yes.
public.
Yeah.
But I'm so passionate about the brand and the product that it's grown me into a space which I wouldn't have chosen for myself, but I need to
Mm.
do it in order to grow my business. So, but
Yeah.
fortunately,
Wow.
it's a positive growth, and I'm not doing something that, you know, you do things for your business, right, in order to grow. But this is a really
Yes.
good one, is to put myself out, on stage and publicly and on
Yeah.
podcasts. Thank you.
What do people often think about you, but actually behind that face, actually it's different, or like you feel it different? Is there something people think like, oh yeah, that is Sam, but actually that's not how you experience it? Is there something about that?
So often I don't get invited places. People forget about me because they think I'm so busy or I'm not in the country.
Okay.
And I love many weekends where I'm just home, quiet,
Yes. Yeah.
and everyone else is busy and I'm quiet. And I've kind of developed this, this feeling of JOMO, the joy of missing out, and I might pop
Oh,
on and
okay.
they're at a festival and it's like, nice, no thanks. I'd rather be home. So as opposed to FOMO, which we definitely in our growing years, there was always
Yeah.
FOMO, but
Yes.
now it's JOMO.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, people tend to think that I'm always busy, and I'm not. I actually, my quiet time are essential.
Yes. Yeah. And in terms of the growth you mentioned, like what version of you did have to die, or like what parts of you did you have to let go, and then on the other side to learn to be that person you are today? Was there
Hmm.
something like specific lessons, specific versions that you had to grow into or had to
Hmm.
let go because they didn't really fit anymore?
So I remember when my business partners first joined me 12 years ago. Eh, the one gave me like a project to do, like a budget or a forecast or something. And I don't know if you've heard of the terminology like junior masculine, which is the apprentice, the one that doesn't know, they're still in learning. And I remember,
Okay.
I know I have to do this. And then I did it and I was like, oh, wow, that was really interesting.
Yeah.
That was a nice exercise to do.
Yeah.
So there were things that, because I didn't study business, I didn't study to be an accountant or an MBA or business economics or anything. The running of my business has just kind of been a thumbsuck and I'm winging it, right?
Yeah.
So when somebody who knew what they were doing, and the sort of the Exco framework was
Yeah.
actually incredibly valuable over the years. I remember there was one January, we had like an Exco in the December, and it was, everything we had discussed and then the action points. And I remember in the January, I was not feeling up for like getting back into business. I just wanted the holiday
Mm.
to extend like threefold. And I was
Yeah.
struggling to kind of, get back into the groove. And I pulled up the Exco meeting from the December and the action points. And it just like, I picked it up. And
Mm.
I remember that was amazing. So there are definitely business tools that have incredible value.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And about also this kind of like I'm not sure if it's a balance, but for example, like you mentioned that you work with Whole Foods or like you are here in like all different like restaurants and like all over the place. I've seen your brand a lot. But these people, like these businesses, they all operate on margins, on profit maximization, whatsoever. And then versus your purpose, and probably, as I heard before, that you're also like more like a spiritual person. A lot of things have been like from intuition. How do you balance that out to kind of like being this rational and like what the customers want, and it's all about margins, I guess, and then like trusting your gut and following your higher self in a way.
Sure. Interesting question. So, I mean, from the very beginning, I never did a business plan.
Mm.
When I wanted, I knew that I needed a business partner because I'd sold my house and bought 34 tons of salt and lived off the proceeds for 2 years. And then I knew I was running out and I needed some more capital. And that's when I did a business plan. And actually, I
Yeah.
think I've got the hard drive. I really want to look at if I made it to the 5 year, like if I grew the business in the 5 years of that business plan that I did. And I really believe that I did. And I exceeded it.
Yeah.
So the power of intention has been, I don't know where I learned it or if it was just something that I became aware of and grew. And interestingly, it was quite a little cold this morning. And as you know, we've had like 5 days of rain and the temperature's definitely dropped. So I made a fire this morning. And I was actually used it as a metaphor for life because I scrumpled up the paper and I put the kindling sticks and then I put the logs on
Yeah.
and I lit it. And if it just, it lit, and if I left it, it would have
Yeah.
fizzled out and the wood wouldn't have caught on fire. But
Yeah.
I breathed into the fire and
Mm.
I realized that's a little bit like life. Like life, you need to put breath and intention and energy into what it is that you're creating, like very focused, because the more your breath is, you know, you're blowing into a certain part of the fire and it ignites it and it heats it up, and then the kindling catches and then the wood catches.
Mm.
So, and in the beginning, I did go on a 3-day course to, just sharing around being a manager and a director and a shareholder. And there was somebody Ronnie Mule, who was the first South African to Mount Everest. And he spoke
Oh.
about that journey to the top of the mountain. And it made so much sense. If you know you want to get to the top of Everest, you've got to
Mm.
train for it. You've got
Yeah.
to train, you know, your stamina and your being able to, handle altitude, and you've got to have the right equipment and you've got to have the right support, like your Sherpa, to take the extra things that you need. So you plan everything in order to get to the top of the mountain. So a
Yeah.
business is the same. Like, where do you want to get to? Where do
Mm.
you really know? Have you put time into envisioning, dreaming, thinking about where you want to get to? Because if you don't know, then how
Mm.
can providence and serendipity and everything support you if you don't know where you're going, or you don't know what you want for your life?
Yeah.
And so,
And
yeah,
you lose
I
energy.
definitely.
You have energy. Yeah. If you
Mm,
if you don't go into
totally.
that direction. Yeah. Yeah.
And just, the other analogy, which I think we've all heard, is, if you're on a boat and you're crossing the Atlantic Ocean, you've got to keep checking your GPS, because otherwise you'll end up in the Antarctic. You won't end up in the Caribbean if you're
Yeah.
1 degree off the whole time. So it's
Yeah.
just resetting that compass to.
Yeah.
And also, I think actually I started mountain biking at one stage, and I was sort of downhilling, and it was in the very beginning, and the friend that was kind of training and teaching me, if you're going down through a forest, you don't look at the tree, right? You look at the space between the tree. Because if you look at the tree, you're going to go into the tree.
Yes.
And I had an incident where there was this quite thin bridge over this little river. And instead of
Yeah.
looking on the other side of where it was to move me across, I was looking at this little narrow bridge and looking down, and I fell off and I hurt myself.
No.
So I think it's really important to keep looking ahead to where you want to go and not staying in the next two steps. And it's been I've noticed it often where, like, I've got to expand my time. Like, okay, so even with this beautiful influencer Dave Asprey, who's the father of biohacking, I'd seen
Yeah.
a video of his 2 years before I ended up at the conference, and he spoke
Mm-hmm.
about the smallest biohack is grinding salt
Mm.
into your water,
Yeah. In the morning,
because
right?
salt, yes, all day actually. Salt's the original electrolyte. So your body functions, your electromagnetic energy and synapses and digestion and muscles and nerves and everything
Yeah.
needs salt to function. So if you
Mm.
are energizing and mineralizing your water, you're actually going to be at a higher vibration and a higher frequency, and your vitality is going to be higher, and you're going to be more functional, more productive. And when
Yeah.
I heard him say that, I was like, "Ooh, I like you, and I want you on my team."
Yeah.
And I just set my intention. I found out his PA. I sent him salt, and I ended up at his and I now go to his biohacking conference every year.
Wow.
And sometimes there are these random posts on Instagram where Dave's talking about Oryx Desert salt. So yeah,
But
intention
it's
is
it's
powerful.
interesting because there's a lot of misconception that, like, you shouldn't have too much salt, or when you have salt then you might get fat because the body is storing more water and whatsoever. There's a lot of misconception out there in this world, eh?
There's a scary, probably the biggest lie, I would say. I mean, there are many
Yeah.
lies from, all different sources. Um, but that salt is bad for you. It's
Yeah.
third most important to the body after oxygen and water. You actually can't function without it. Your body cannot function.
Yeah.
And if you were to cut all salt out of your diet completely, eventually you would go into a coma and you'd die.
Mm.
But it's far more subtle, and we obviously get sodium chloride that is important. I mean, a table salt shouldn't really be referred to as salt. It's fake.
Yeah.
Comes from the same source, but it's stripped, it's processed, it's heated, and then they add anti-caking agents and sugar to it in order for it to stop absorbing moisture. But that's what
Mm.
salt's gift is to the body. Salt is naturally, if I was to leave this on a plate, it would be wet after, I mean, especially now in, the winter season, within
Mm.
a couple of days. And that's how the
Yeah.
body stays hydrated. The salt, utilizes the water and then the minerals, and it creates it in a way that is a similar proportion to um, you know, your blood and your tears and your sweat are salty, right? So
Yeah.
if you're just drinking lots of water, you're flushing your kidneys, and the body struggles with just pure water. It needs to be mineral rich. And you can do that with putting a sprinkle or two of salt, good quality salt that's not table
Quality salt.
salt.
Yeah. Were you a bit afraid in the beginning that you have to basically go against the big salt giants which were out there? I mean, probably you were one of the first ones, right, who kind of brought a different salt. Yeah.
In a way, I did walk down the red carpet of Himalayan salt, actually,
Mm.
because Himalayan's pink. So saying salt is mineral rich is a little bit of greenwashing, because all salt is mineral rich except for table salt that's been demineralized and stripped and processed by man, right? But all salts naturally found are mineral rich. They're obviously a different proportion and a different taste, and they're their own unique personality and soul.
Yeah.
But what was a concern in the beginning was I refused to iodate our salt, because I didn't want to add anything, because it's a natural salt and I don't add any chemicals, and I'm not going to add iodine to it. And in fact, it's actually apparently one of the only salts that people with hyperthyroidism and a sensitive thyroid and who are iodine intolerant, they can use
Yeah.
Oryx Desert because iodine hasn't been added and because it comes from the desert, whereas
Yeah.
sea salt would tend to have more iodine because of kelp and seaweed, which is a natural source.
Yeah.
So I felt like I really had to kind of scoot under the radar around the iodine and salt being mandated by government, which is actually
Wow.
a very old rule. It came around, I think, 1943 after the war. And because people were struggling with no iodine, because
Okay.
food was so isolated from, from where they were, and they weren't eating fish, which is obviously a natural source as well. So they use salt as a carrier, not because
Mm.
salt and iodine have to go together, but just because everyone had salt in their diet, in their food every day. So if they
Mm.
were using salt as the one ingredient that was, absolute, and okay, well, let's put iodine to help those who were struggling from goiters. But we're not in those times anymore. So it's one of those rules that kind of stuck around. I mean, in the US, we have to put a sticker on. This does not contain iodide, a necessary nutrient.
Okay.
I wasn't allowed to put on the bottle that it has natural minerals and trace elements. I'm like that's doff, I can't say what it has naturally, but I have to say
Yes.
that it doesn't have something that I have to add. It's just like,
This is funny. Oh wow. Okay. So some like red tape here, or like some, yeah, probably some regulations there. Yeah. Wow. Just looking at the time now, we have one tradition here on this show. What would you say founders, maybe especially in South Africa, should talk more about? Or what is a topic you feel like, oh, there should be more focus laid on? Something that might have helped you, or something you've seen or haven't seen?
So I remember after about 5 years, my investors needed to put more money in, and I was pretty blown away. Like we were growing and we were turning over an amount that I'd only dreamed of, and yet we were still struggling with cash flow, and we still needed more money to fund the business to grow. And that concept, having not studied business, I mean, it makes complete sense. Your money goes into your debtors because you're giving terms to your suppliers, and you needing to take on more stock, and you need more stock in order to have available for your growth. But how many it scared me then how many businesses would have failed because of their success, because they actually successfully grow into decline and into standstill because they can't fund themselves.
Mm.
The funding, I mean, those businesses out there, and I know a couple of them who don't have funders, and I'm so deeply in awe and such huge respect for those who have managed to keep going without external.
Yeah.
So I think that funding, which is obviously tricky, but I think I mean, social media, thank you, internet and social media. And, in South Africa, there's the beautiful, Mark Sham from Suits and Sneakers, who does events to support entrepreneurs. His events are all free so that you can go and learn. And of course, podcasts. So it's learning, that learning aspect is so, so, so important, is to just keep oneself inspired and growing. And
Yeah.
then yeah, I think if you're on purpose, if you are really doing what you love and you're passionate, your product or your service is in integrity, I believe that absolutely it will be a success.
Yeah.
And to spend less time doubting yourself and more time learning and asking for help. Asking for help is so incredibly valuable and very underrated and not
Yes.
done enough by entrepreneurs, is to be bolder. You already have so much courage because you now have left the safety net of corporate or, having a job, and you're doing your own thing. So just
Yeah.
dial up that courage a little bit more and ask for help.
Yeah.
People want to help and want to support.
Yeah. How can the community support you, Sam? Is there something you can do? How can they find you? Find
So
more
follow
salt?
me on LinkedIn. Definitely get Oryx Desert salt into your kitchen. Oh, and just by the way, I haven't shared that this grinding mechanism is ceramic, and
Yes.
so not grinding plastic into your food. And
Mm,
you only buy this once, and you just keep refilling it. So it saves you money. You'll have the
mm,
best salt in your food and for your body.
yes.
Remember to put it into your water every day and only buy it once. So last year we saved 1,214,900 heads from landfill. So you'd
Wow.
actually be making a difference to the environment and to your own health. Share it with your friends. You can buy it as gifts. And my focus is America and growing America. So if you have any friends in America, please send them a link. We have a Shopify site. And please engage on social media, share your stories. Yeah. And actually, just one last thing is do the taste test. Grind Oryx Desert Salt onto a plate or onto your hand and have a taste. And then
Yeah.
taste what you currently have in your kitchen
Mm,
and taste the difference. It actually is an incredibly beautiful, flavorful salt.
okay. I will do that. Yeah, I will do that just now. Wow. Perfect. So what's the next journey for you? What is on the agenda? Like what's like is there a specific milestone you want to hit? Like you just mentioned America, probably so
Yeah,
expansion.
so I'm there for my first restaurant show. So very excited
Oh
to
wow.
start getting the word out to restaurants and restaurant distributors to get Oryx salt and pepper onto
Yeah.
table. So that's our little set that goes together. And the peppers from small scale farmers in Madagascar. And then I'm going to the biohacking conference. And yeah, just setting my intention to grow and open more retailers in the US. So HEB, Sprouts, natural grocers, and
Yeah.
lots of independents. So
Yeah. That's
looking
a
forward.
big milestone. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today on the show. It was really great to listen to your story.
Thanks for listening. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.